Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the greatest games on the Blizzard with myself, Marcus Speller, and Jonathan Wilson. And with us today, it's the voice of BBC Radio 5 Live. It's Nihal Arthanayake. Nihal, how the devil are you?
I'm good. I'm a voice.
Yes.
On Radio 5 Live. I think my colleagues might go, wait a minute, we're a voice too, here on 5 Live. It's not just you. Here he comes, the new boy, and starts taking over. No. So I'm a voice between 1 and 4 in the afternoon, 4 days a week.
Well, for my money, Nihal, you're the voice. But
Is
they are
the
my
right answer.
That's my words, not yours. Let's be clear about that.
Very clear.
Today, we don't go back very far. We go back to 2019, the semi-final second leg between Ajax and Tottenham Hotspur, which of course ended 3-2 to Tottenham Hotspur, which put those Spurs boys through on away goals. Nihal, why have you chosen this game?
Because I've never cried after a football match before, but that made me cry my eyes out. And even watching it now, it still makes me teary. I've never felt the elation, the excitement, the dread, the pain, the despondency that I felt throughout that game. It's just never happened to me. And, I was there in 2007, the last time we won a trophy at Wembley, the League Cup against Chelsea. And I was there, and I watched that, but nothing compared. And I was there at the ground watching it. This was just on my sofa in my living room. I think it made a huge difference that it was also with my then 11-year-old son. And to watch it with him was just the best feeling ever. In a season where we just couldn't believe that we'd got to the semi-final. We couldn't believe that we got through that insane quarter-final against Manchester City, the second leg of that. So to then be in the semi-final and then, how it ended. There's no other game of football I've ever seen that has made me feel that way.
I'm interested. Obviously it's a semi-final, not a quarter-final. But why do you think it meant that much more than the City game? Is it the fact that it's sort of one on a positive in that you Tottenham score in the last minute rather than the opposition having a goal ruled out in the last minute? Is it as simple as that, or why did it mean so much more?
I just think that the drama of it was more. I think the City, from what I remember, it was just bang, us, them, us, them, us, them, us, them. Whereas actually by half time, it was Ajax, it was them. They were 3-0 up on aggregate. So there was just kind of no way through this, apart from we're in the semi-final. It's all good, we'll enjoy the experience of being in the semi-final, and to get to a Champions League final. I know you said it's the semi-final, not the quarter-final. Of course, that makes a huge difference. But how? You're talking about 5 minutes of extra time, and I think he scored on the 95th minute or 95th minute and 1 second. It was extraordinary what happened. And I've never watched a game of football. I know what's happening. I watched it today. It's like, I know that we went through, and I'm still freaking out while I'm watching it. That's the weird thing. I'm still going, it's a bit moody, isn't it? This. I'm at half time. I'm like, wait a minute, what are you doing, you idiot? You know what happened. You count to the minute. So it just was an exhilaration which cannot be replicated in a league game, right? I don't know what it feels like. I've said this before. I think, was it Aguero against QPR when Man City won the league for the first time in however many years, and it was last minute stuff. And I guess it's comparable to that, except of course this is on a much bigger stage, right? This is the Champions League, and it had just been a fairy tale season in terms of the Champions League, which had definitely plastered over the cracks in our domestic form. We were ignoring what was going on with our away form, right, which was just horrible, and eventually led, of course, to Pochettino getting the sack. But that moment in Amsterdam was insane. Look at that. I'm all kind of glazing over, looking away into
you
the
might
distance.
need to take a moment here.
Dude, I had to today. So I watched it again because I thought, right, I just need to feel what it felt like and just watching it again, because the atmosphere in that stadium, I mean, they must be amongst the best football fans in the world, Ajax fans. It was just relentless. The singing.
The noise was phenomenal.
The noise was just extraordinary. And there was a pocket of Spurs fans up the top there, just tucked away in the gods. And there we were. And like I said, 3-0 down on aggregate by half time. And you're just like, you know.
If I remember correctly, Jonathan, it was quite the week of football. I think Vincent Kompany had scored a spectacular goal for Manchester City at home to Leicester on their sort of drive for the league, which was a, you know, for Manchester City was a great story in itself. You then have Liverpool with their sensational comeback, a game we covered with Asif Kapadia.
4-0. Who beats Barcelona? But Bayern.
Improved
this season. Like more goals.
Yeah, it turned out it wasn't that big of an achievement. But Liverpool, you know, with their incredible story, it sort of, you had these amazing stories, and then it was kind of over to Spurs. And in the first leg at home, you know, Ajax had won 1-0. Jonathan, probably should have been more than that, but Ajax,
they were the better side. Ajax by a long way. Yeah, I mean, Neves at the post as well. You know, Van der Beek got the goal, but. Yeah, Ajax Ajax have been brilliant, don't forget, in beating Real Madrid and Juve in the previous 2 rounds. I mean,
away at Real Madrid, they were phenomenal.
Yeah, phenomenal. Both those games. They outplayed two of the absolute giants of football, and you know,
their team got decimated as a result of it, with all their best players going to Juventus and Barcelona and Chelsea and Manchester United. Yeah. It was an advert for every other club in Europe, wasn't it, to come buy them afterwards? Yeah.
But that is a point, though, Jonathan, because it felt like this Ajax side. You know, we remember teams from, you know, a couple of decades ago where the Champions League was the place where you discovered players and where you discovered teams, and that hadn't been the case as much as time goes on, as you have mass media, internet, all the rest of it. But this Ajax side seemed to be like a bit of a throwback in that sense.
Yeah,
hang on a minute, we didn't know too much about them, or some people probably did, but it was a very exciting side, and they turned a lot of heads that season.
Yeah, and I think the reason it doesn't happen, I mean, yeah, partly it is the saturation coverage, partly it is as soon as a team starts to do well, they get plundered by everybody else. So you've basically got at most a 2-year window to capitalise. So you'd sort of seen it a little bit with Monaco, and they'd been plundered. But this Ajax side, I think, was a level above that Monaco. I mean, to absolutely outplay Real Madrid and Juventus over 4 legs, you know, they were a great side. And I guess because of the history of Ajax, and you thought back to the team of the early 70s, thought back to Louis van Gaal's team of the mid-90s, there was that sense of, well, at least we understand where this comes from. It's part of this tradition. Every 20-odd years, they get the great generation, and this is the great generation, and let's enjoy them while they're still here. And you know, it looked for all the world like they were going to a final, like they were going to do what they'd done in '95.
Yeah, and they probably should have done. But I mean, after the first leg, Nihal.
Yes.
Who cares what they should have done? They didn't do it. When you were watching the first leg. Because Spurs themselves they'd come through a group of death, really, in the first round. Yes. In Barcelona, their first couple of games.
Yeah, I was at Wembley, actually, when Lionel Messi just absolutely tore us a new one. I mean, it was just like, just watching this game. How did you just do that? I mean, it was insane watching that, I remember.
Were you thinking that, though? I mean, they'd been beaten just the last goal from Inter in their first game, and then they were beaten 4-2 at home. Did you think to yourself, we might have bitten off more than we can chew here, lads?
Do you know, it's the old cliche, isn't it? The hope that kills you. But Pochettino had instilled in Spurs fans something that I hadn't felt as a Spurs fan. I guess we'd felt it a bit with Harry Redknapp and that run in the Champions League when we became the advertising hoardings for Gareth Bale and Luka Modric in the Champions League that season. It's really interesting that I watched the City game with a really good mate of mine called Chris, who really does know his football. You know, he's an agent and massive gooner. So he was obviously willing us to lose that game against Manchester City. But almost from the beginning of that match, he said to me, "You're going all the way." But even before that match, he said, "You're going all the way." There's something about Spurs this season in the Champions League that is just a kind of cavalier, never say die. And, I've seen Spurs matches, teams of the past where, you go down and all the shoulders come down. The body language tells you, just like Manchester United's body language the other day when we smashed them 6-1. And, that's what we were used to seeing. But this group of lads, it wasn't that. It wasn't that. They just kept going and going. And once we got out of that group, again, look, who knows what can happen, And we are notorious pessimists, aren't we, Spurs fans? Like, despondency is part of our DNA. So it's like, we're 4-0 up. It's the 88th minute. And we're like, I'll get a draw, right? I'll settle for a draw, right? Happy days, right? If I can get 1 point out of this, it's the whole Spursy thing, right? But that seemed to have changed, massively. People who were neutrals, journalists, were trying to stop us from saying this word Spursy as if it was an anachronism of a foregone era. Then, of course, we started up the season 2019-2020 back to being Spursy again. But yeah, there was just there was just an energy around Spurs that Pochettino brought to that team.
Well, it's easy to sort of forget just how close Spurs came to going out in that group. I mean, the penultimate game was an 80th minute Ericsson goal to beat Inter.
And Inter had set out for a point that game.
Yeah.
And they were so close to getting it, which is all they needed.
Yeah. So 10 minutes from time, Spurs get the winner. Then the final two games, Spurs go to Barcelona, who play a second string side because they're already through. And Spurs have to match the result that Inter get against PSV, who were already out.
Yes, it was. I forgot. Yeah.
And PSV score early. So 13 minutes, I think, Evan Lozano scored. And Inter do come back and draw it 1-1. Barca take the lead. But an 85th minute equaliser from Lucas Moura is what takes Tottenham through. So they've already had 2 near misses in the last 2 games of the group. Even before we get to the craziness of City and then this game.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is all kind of coming back to me now that just, yes. I mean, again, I watched all those games with my son, and he is a then 11-year-old, had already adopted very Spursy qualities. I mean, just even the other day when the penalty after a minute for Manchester United, I know we're talking about another game, but just that, he's just like, it's over. We're going to get annihilated. Right? He's like, 0 to depression very, very quickly. But those things, the power of, like I keep saying, look, the power of that team and the belief that Pochettino instilled in that, which had been building, of course, for a number of seasons. We came third in a 2-horse race, didn't we?
That's right.
Yeah. And we were top 4, and we'd almost. My son said something quite interesting to me last year. He said, "Why are you always going on about Arsenal? That's not. They're not who we should be bothering about. They're rubbish."
Well, that's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. As a kid, he doesn't see Arsenal as the people to beat. He's just like, well, that's just like a mid-table team, right? Like, why are you bothering about? Why do you get so angry about Arsenal right there? Which is indicative of the power shift in North London in many ways. One that I think is set to last for some time. Looking at the investment we've made compared to the investment that they're making, but again, we're not here to talk about Arsenal Spurs. But yeah, he's like, why are you obsessed with them? It's like some really bad ex, like it's like a bad relationship you were once in. You're like, yeah, right, yeah. Horrible. Look at her now driving past in her car with her new guy. Like, he's like, you need to get over this. For him, it's Man City that he can't stand. He can't stand United and City because now we've moved up to the northwest of England. He's one of 2 Spurs supporters in his whole year, right? And they're all City, United, and a smattering of Liverpool. That's it. So for him, it's them. They're the ones he's like, like that.
But that shows you, Jonathan, what Pochettino did there. I mean, earlier I said, perhaps Spurs had bitten off more than they can chew when they were playing against Inter and Barcelona. But actually, I've done them a disservice because it wasn't that long before this. They'd beaten Real Madrid in the Champions League. They'd had some marquee results.
Beaten Dortmund as well the previous season.
And they beat them in this season as well. They fairly brushed them aside, actually, didn't they, to set up that quarter-final against Manchester City.
And Dortmund were, I think, top of the Bundesliga when we beat them. You know, I think because Dortmund didn't have a brilliant start to the season in Bundesliga.
Yeah, that's right.
And they did really, really well. So when we were drawn against them, they were flying in the Bundesliga. You know, and we were like, oh, okay, they're a bit naughty.
Yeah.
You know, we had fun.
Yeah, but
you're right. I mean, Pochettino, it's partly having the faith in young players and developing them. It's partly instilling this hard pressing style. It's partly the conditioning, which for a while I think Tottenham were pretty evidently, you know, even without looking at stats, just with the evidence of your eyes, they're pretty evidently the fittest team in the Premier League.
Yes.
But the key, you're right, the key is the mentality. And I think where you really see Pochettino's influence over that, or his awareness of the necessity of changing that, compare Chiellini, and this is the history of Tottenham, the previous season, with Pochettino coming on the pitch at the end of this game. And what's the thing he's doing? He's making strange cupping gestures near his groin and talking about huevos. And the whole thing is about huevos.
Right.
About balls.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's a very Argentinian thing, isn't it, apparently?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, it's culturally a very Argentinian, the whole... like that
that's what it means. We understand it. It means, we've got guts, we've got character, we've got spirit. We were tested and we came through it.
Well, you mentioned, sort of, as you say, sort of Chiellini there, you know, alluding to the game they were beaten by Juventus in the previous year,
which they should have won. I mean, they should have won. That was typical Spurs. You know, losing a game where they were dominant.
But it showed you how far Spurs had come, especially in that competition, because they played Juventus, who had that back line. They still had Buffon and so on. Yeah, they were a bit older, but still seasoned Champions League warriors. And Spurs came away, had a good game against them, but lost and were gutted that they hadn't beaten Juventus in a knockout game in the Champions League. Now, I mean, again, with under Redknapp at Spurs, it was kind of like, oh, what can we do here? Oh, blimey, we've just beaten them, or we've just scored a couple past them. That's a bit cheeky. There was a bit of the cheeky chappy, whereas it'd been a bit of a sea change for Spurs to lose a knockout game narrowly against Juventus in the Champions League and come away thinking, how did we lose that?
That is indicative of a mentality change, right? Is that you deserve to be at the top table. You don't deserve to be thinking, wow, we've come 10th result. And we drew with Arsenal at Highbury, right? I mean, that was kind of what was previously the thing. Wow, we didn't lose to Arsenal. Yes. Highbury, brilliantly. Whereas now it's like, all right, let's kind of get out of my way. And that was just such a huge change to watch beautiful football, consistently beautiful football with a plan, as opposed to what I think we've been used to over years, was seeing, you know, kind of Berbatovs or Ginolas or these kinds of people come in and just be these great individuals. And even in that team, no disrespect to everybody else, but you remember Luka Modric and Gareth Bale, right? You remember those two guys and just like, this is amazing that we're seeing it. But then with Pochettino, we were suddenly seeing in every part of the pitch quality football that was all linked up with this almost telepathic knowledge of where each of them were. And that was something that we hadn't seen. You know, sometimes you go to Spurs and you sit next to these old fellas who've been coming to see Tottenham for like 50, 60 years. And they're saying it. You know, they're saying this is some of the most beautiful football, if not the most beautiful football I have ever seen at Tottenham. And it's Mauricio Pochettino that just revived or created that and built that team. Which sadly, once we got to the Champions League final and lost in Champions League final, there was nowhere left for him to go.
All right, let's have a quick break. And after the break, we will talk about the match itself. See you in a moment. Welcome back to the Greatest Games on the Blizzard, everybody. Now, gentlemen, so we've sort of briefly mentioned the first leg. Ajax were dominant. They won 1-0. It could have been more than 1-0. Spurs maybe were quite happy to just get out there with a 1-0 loss, even though that's a poor result. Obviously, you don't want to be going away from home 1-0 down. But was that the feeling with you, Nihal? Were you quite sort of relieved it wasn't more?
Yeah, absolutely. And yes, they were dominant, but we were poor. You know, we were poor. You know, we were a very different team that went to Ajax from the team that we saw at White Hart Lane. So yes, of course they were dominant, but we allowed them to be
It's nice that you're still calling it White Hart Lane, by the way.
Yeah, I know. I should just still call it the Lane. Actually, I actually usually just still say the Lane.
Yeah.
I don't. Well, because I mean, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium just doesn't quite work. Until it becomes Walmart Stadium or KFC Stadium, I'll stick with calling it the Lane, because luckily it's still in the geographical part. Luckily we didn't end up buying the stadium that ended up being West Ham Stadium. I think that was mooted at one point, wasn't it?
Blimey. Anyway, sorry, I interrupted.
So,
sorry.
No. So I forgot my train of thought.
I think it was a different side that went into that second leg, but Spurs were poor on the first.
Completely. And I don't know what switched. Well, I guess what switched. They realised that they were still in it, right? They were still in it, but they had to. And it's strange, isn't it? Strange that at home, in front of your home fans, you put on a poorer performance than going to that place, which is daunting, right? To go there and do what Spurs did, because I just remember. I don't think I've ever heard a stadium sing so well in key. Yeah. They sing so beautifully. What's the Bob Marley song they all sing?
Three Little Birds.
Three Little Birds. And I was like thinking, it sounds like a choir. I mean, it's not just like a bunch of blokes going, every little thing's going to be all right. Like, as you would, it's like, and every little thing's going to be all right. And you're like, wow, you guys can sing. I thought, geez, if you play football like you can sing, we're really in trouble.
But well, I mean, Jonathan, what did you make of Spurs in that semi-final? Because they'd obviously played Manchester City. People would have fancied City to do a quadruple that year.
VAR, my lord, VAR, VAR, my lord, VAR.
I think you've been taking lessons from Ajax fans, haven't you?
I really have. Yeah. But, Gareth Malone, I'm free, Gareth Malone, if you need me for anything.
But they'd beaten Manchester City. I mean, were they fortunate in that second leg? I mean,
yes.
VAR? Yeah, okay, fine. You said it, not me.
Were they fortunate?
The way you spoke about the game so sort of eloquently and with that feeling, I thought, I don't want to upset him. But Jonathan, they were fortunate.
Apart from the bits where City switch off and let Son score twice in 2 minutes, the bit where Llorente punched the ball over the line, and the bit where City have a goal disallowed after about 3 minutes looking at a video for an offside that is invisible to the naked eye. Apart from those things, then they totally deserved it.
Absolutely dominant. Dominant would be a word that you might describe. So, but considering the enormity of that result, were you surprised they were kind of so timid in that first leg?
Yeah, and I mean, it's easy to say in that respect. And Pochettino, his track record. He clearly knows what he's doing, but I think in that respect he would probably accept that playing the back three in the first half, when he switched it at half time in the first leg, that didn't work, and it was one of those decisions that seemed slightly odd in that normally you would play a back three if the opposition got two up because you want two markers plus an extra man, and I know with zonal systems it's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's sort of the rule of thumb. So whether he thought Tadic would play more centrally in that game, I don't know. And the fact he changed it at half time because he realised it wasn't working. But I think the going to the back four, it was the right thing to do. Although the first half in this game, Spurs weren't particularly good, and it's after Llorente comes on for Wanyama and they go 2 up and they play Llorente and Lucas Moura together up front, and they've got that option to go long. That's when they start to worry Ajax. And I guess that is what he tried in the first leg, playing Llorente from the start, but it hadn't worked then.
Yeah, it worked in the City game, didn't it? That's where it works.
Bringing Llorente on, yeah.
Yes,
and if you're playing against a team who presses you and you're struggling to play through the press, if you bring on a big target man, it's an easy way. You can just go over the press, and Llorente is one of those players where if a ball's in the air and within sort of 5-10 yards of him, he's probably going to win it and flick it on or hold it up. And Llorente is really is the last of that kind of target man at that level in the modern game. I can't think of anybody remotely similar to him. So I guess not just he's really good at it, it's that it's a challenge defenders are not used to facing. And I mean, I remember the first time I saw him live, which was it was Bielsa's first win as athletic manager, and they were away against Real Sociedad, and he scored 2 absolutely brilliant goals in that game, both of them taking the ball down and scoring with volleys. And they're not the kind of thing you expect him to be doing. You sort of think of him as being a bit of a lump. And I hadn't appreciated just how good his touch was. But he's a bit like, and I appreciate, for me, this is the highest praise I can convey.
I know what you're going to say.
He's a little bit like Niall Quinn.
I knew you were going to say Niall Quinn. I thought Sunderland haven't had a mention so far.
But to have that physical strength, that chest control, and he's limited in what he can do. But what he can do, he's phenomenally good at.
Yeah. Well, into the second leg then, chaps. I mean, we've already talked about it, the sound of the stadium, the noise. Ajax go 1-0 up on the night after about 5 minutes. And now you must be thinking, oh, bloody hell. The way they celebrated the goal as well. This was a side, they'd knocked out Real Madrid, Juventus, young, brilliant, technically gifted players. They're on their way to the final, surely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, clearly in that stadium, amongst those players... This was it, right? This was it. This is just like, we just got to brush these jokers out of the way.
You've had your fun, lads.
Yeah, exactly right. You've had your fun. We're 2-0 up. Happy days. You carry on kicking the ball up to yourselves. We're off to Madrid. It did feel like that. Yeah, it really did feel like that. It felt like a celebration, that it was all, not, and I'm not just talking about the goal, but actually that we were all gathered for the coronation of this young Ajax team, right? And we were just kind of there. We were there. A bit like the groom at a wedding, right? No one cares about the groom, right? It's all about the bride. And we just felt like, oh yeah, he's the guy there. Yeah, go do a speech, whatever. But actually, we're all focused on this team, and it did feel like that. It felt like a celebration.
And the first half, they played up to that, right? I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah, the first goal is a corner. It's pretty weak marking. De Ligt gets the header. Yes. But the corner comes about because of a bit of brilliance from Tadic, a deflected shot, and Lloris has made a brilliant save, even to concede the corner. Yes, it's just taken that flick off. I can't remember which defender it was, but it's sort of a looping shot that he has to sort of not just get across to, but he has to judge the height of it.
Yes,
and then Ajax. Ali hits the post with it was a lovely move, kind of down the left, and Onana sort of drifts off his post, and Ali's got the sort of the wherewithal to see that there's that little space of near post.
Was it Sonny that hit the post?
It might have been Son. Well, either or, it's down that side, and the post is hit. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, their goalkeeper leaves plenty of space, doesn't he?
Yeah.
to score at his inside post. I remember that there was plenty of space there. Yeah.
And then the second goal, Trippier's a little bit weak. But it's a brilliant finish from Ziyech.
But again,
it's a fantastic goal from Ziyech.
Again, now, as I say, you've got 1-0 down from De Ligt, who's 19 years old or something like that, very young, and he's playing like he's 25, 26 in his pomp. He looks like a man. He was an unbelievable specimen.
He was captain, wasn't he?
Yeah, and it just phenomenal. He scored, I think, at Juventus, and then Ziyech gets on the end of that one, slams the ball into the corner, again, it is all just kind of like, as you say, we're going to wipe these lot aside, and then whoever's in the final, Barcelona, Liverpool, we're waiting for you. That's what the feeling was when that second goal on the night went in from Ziyech. And then the fans singing Three Little Birds at half time.
Yes.
To me, looking back on it now, that's one of those moments where, if you think about the 99 Champions League final, Manchester United, Bayern Munich, the way the Bayern Munich fans are singing and dancing and waving their hands around when it's 1-0, and Teddy Sheringham's on the bench looking at them going, get me, I'm not having this, sort of thing. And looking back on it, when Ajax, the fans are singing the Three Little Birds at half-time, really raucously, you think to yourself, they're through, it's all done. But actually, surely the way Spurs came out in the second half, Pochettino would have looked at that side and gone, do you hear this? Do you hear this? This has got to be used for motivation to get those players up for it.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know, who knows what he said to them at half time. But but again, it goes back to that whole mentality of, you're 3-0 down to Ajax in the Champions League semi-final, and the Tottenham teams of the past, it would have been 5-0, right?
Yeah.
They would have just come out, shoulders down. It would have, or maybe they'd had a first 10 minutes or so where they were running around, going everything and trying to chase down every ball, and then give up. But these guys, it's just incredible. They came out, and that second half was extraordinary, right? I mean, they were just they laid siege to Ajax, and Ajax just hope to soak it all up and then catch a break with the speed and the talent that they have, maybe score another, but try and soak it all up. Because I mean, that was it. The second Moura goal was the goal where it was an absolute Keystone Cops in the area. Right?
Yeah, it's the second goal.
Yeah, second goal, just like absolute mayhem. It's like I think they took Schürrle, was it? They took him off after that second goal because he made such a howler because the goalkeeper did an extraordinary job in keeping out the first one. Then I think it hit Llorente and he saved that as well. And then suddenly there's all this chaos going on. He tries to catch it. Schürrle kicks it out of his hand, I think it is. Moura then goes round the houses and he kind of like megs 3 players or something to get it into the goal. I mean, it's just insane. You're like looking at this game because it was something out of nothing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's the difference in sort of feel between the first and second goals couldn't have been bigger. So the first goal is just beautiful, smooth.
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of those finishes where you barely even notice he's kicked the ball. It's just sort of the move is so slick.
Nice work from Ali as well.
Yes.
Yeah. It's Ali who plays it to. In fact, it's 1-2, isn't it? Moura to Ali, back to Moura.
There's some controversy over whether that was a poor first touch from Dele Alli.
Well, it's possibly the case,
who tried to run onto it, and then Moura just went boom, 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 bang. Right.
But there's also, I mean, Danny Rose nutmegs somebody much earlier in the move, and then it seems he plays the pass up to Moura, and then this interchange between Moura and Ali, which whatever level of volition there is to that, but then the finish, just a little touch.
Superb.
Is one of those beautiful smooth finishes, which is 55 minutes, and 4 minutes later, again it's a really good move. It could have been a really nice goal. As Trippier bangs it across goal, Llorente comes in, the keeper Onana makes this brilliant save, then sort of makes a second save as the ball's sort of bobbing about. I don't even know who comes off for the second save.
I think it came off Llorente.
So they're both Llorente, are they?
Yeah. For the second goal or the first goal?
So the second goal.
Yeah,
the first effort is Llorente, and it bounces back. And he makes the second save. Yeah. And then, as you say, Moura sort of dribbles away from goal, comes round.
Oh, it's amazing.
And Schürrle's knocked the ball out of the keeper's hands.
Yes.
And you're right, he gets taken off straight away for...
being rubbish.
For Beltman. Yeah.
It's kind of like I think this is the template for Maguire's recent defending.
Oh my goodness! But Moura, what on earth did Pochettino say to Moura at half time? I mean, he came out. He was like Roy the Rover stuff. The way he danced around those defenders.
Yeah, I'm more interested what he said to him after the match.
Well,
when he said, "Listen, thanks for the hat trick, but we're going to play Harry in the final." Right? I mean. How do you say that to a guy who's just scored a hat trick and put you in the? That's the conversation that I want to know about. It's like, because I was looking at going, dude, look, we all work on it. We've all worked in businesses which are, results led, right? Okay. What you don't do is you go, I've just come in. I've just pulled in our biggest client of the year. This is a multi-million-pound contract. I've just done it all on my own. Oh, nice one. Anyway, Steve here is going to be head of sales. We've just decided to promote him to head of sales. You'll be like,
I mean, in among the tears and celebration, that is fantastic, son. You do know that you'll be on the bench in the final.
I know. I'm sorry, but Harry's back. I mean, he's not back full, but it's Harry, and he sells more shirts than you. We've got to get him back in. But anyway, sorry, I've jumped way ahead. But what did he say at half time?
Oh my goodness! But so the second goal goes in, and the way Moura himself celebrates, it's then on, and of course it's on because
it's half an hour to score a goal.
Yes. Yeah. Right? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it turned out it took them 35 minutes to score that goal. But the game then goes on. Now, what do you remember about this section of the game, Nihal? Because the 2 goals scored in fairly quick succession, sort of 10 and 15 minutes roughly after half-time. You then have this kind of 34-minute period where, as far as I sort of remember and watching the highlights, in terms of incidents, there's 1 or 2, but it must have been quite torturous. You're egging the team on, but you don't want to leave the back door open as well, because another goal, Ajax, you would think that would kill it.
I'm still Spursy, remember? So I'm kind of like, we're not going to go through, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're just not, right? They're 3-2 up, and we've done well. I'm proud of the boys.
You've not disgraced yourself on the big stage.
Well, exactly, which, if Spurs supporters, and obviously I don't speak for every single one of them, but if we have that mentality, then the players are ahead of us, right? The players don't have that mentality anymore, right? They're like, we can win this because, as you pointed out, in the group stages, we've been, minutes away from being knocked out, and we've now got this mentality. And, look, every time they get the ball, you think they're going to score, right? Every time. But we are laying siege to them. So you can believe that something is going to happen, but part of you is saying, but this doesn't happen to us.
Yeah, it's the hope that kills you.
Yeah, quite. It just doesn't happen to us.
Yeah.
I've never really sat down and spoke to my son what emotions he went through, right? Because as an 11-year-old at the time, he must have just been, it's quite weird for him. I can't remember his face when.
But he's probably thinking this is set up for us to go through now.
Yeah, I think he probably would be. Yeah, he wouldn't be.
Are you not worried that this has ruined football for him forever? That it's never going to be this good again?
No, because beating Manchester United 6-1.
Yeah,
he said to me the other day, he said, look, we could lose 7-0 to Stoke and I can still go to everyone in my class.
Yeah.
But we beat you 6-1. Like, what are you talking about?
To quote that Man City fan, 6-1 at the Swamp,
Well, right, okay, right. Yeah, absolutely, right. So he, no, it hasn't actually. Now he thinks the return of Gareth Bale to Spurs for him, who has a signed Gareth Bale shirt on his bedroom wall, is the return of the Messiah. Like, this is a religious moment for him. He hasn't played yet, right? He hasn't played yet.
Well, at the time of recording, we should say.
Yes, but that's true. By the time of recording, he hadn't played yet. I think his first game, 18th of October against West Ham, I think is supposed to be when he's coming back. So he is, remember, his baseline is coming fourth. I mean, coming sixth is the worst result he can remember. Now, me, on the other hand, my previous 40 years is we've had slightly more disappointing moments.
You can remember Christian Gross.
I can remember Christian Gross, right? Christian Gross. I just remember, Tim Sherwood's gilet had more conversations around it than the football, which gives you an idea. We've got these odd highlights, one of them being, of course, winning the League Cup. The other one is, Gareth Bale scoring a hat-trick against Inter Milan. We've got those odd moments, but he's just got like second, we came third, we came fourth. We got to a Champions League final. I mean, he's got all of that.
Yeah, so, all that's missing is a trophy, really, from his.
That's right, and he's after having watched the Amazon documentary, he feels now that that's
it's inevitable.
There is inevitability of it. That's what he thinks. Jonathan, don't laugh so much. Jeez, try and hide it. What a shit poker player you would be.
He's a Sunderland fan as well now.
I know. Well, again, didn't they do an all or nothing?
I was about to say, both teams have done documentaries, so similar kind of.
We've done 3 documentaries now. We did Premier Passions back in the 90s and 2 series of Fun Until I Die.
Well, how could we forget Premier Passions? But
God knows I've tried.
Going back to the match itself.
That sounds like a range of soft drinks available at a convenience store, doesn't it? Premier Passions.
Oh, they sold out of Coca-Cola, did they?
Yeah. I'll have a litre of Premier Passion juice, please, mate.
So going back to the match itself, the one incident I do remember, and you can find this easily in the highlights, is 4 minutes from time or a few minutes from time?
Ziyech hits the post after 79 minutes.
Yes,
he
does. Yeah. So there's Ajax could have won it,
and it's one of those angled shots that hits the post flush on.
Yeah.
So literally, if it's an inch to the right, it hits the post and goes in.
Yeah,
game over.
But also as well, it just misses 2 Ajax players that are in a prime position to get
as
the
they're
rebound.
running in. Yeah.
So I mean,
there's an enormous slice of luck there. I think we can agree. But then Spurs themselves, was it? I forget who, Vertonghen. It was Vertonghen heads against the bar.
Yeah,
and you think to yourself, that's the chance, because you usually get one, don't you? And you think to yourself, that was the chance, and you must have thought. Well, what did you think, Jonathan? Did you think that was
Yeah,
it?
no, that was exactly it. Because it's Juventus flick. Vertonghen, it's probably a very slightly harder chance than it initially appears. It's slightly too high for him, but he's not marked, and Vertonghen's a great head of the ball, and he just doesn't quite get over it enough.
How on earth is he not marked as well? I mean, that shows you the chaos factor.
Yeah. Well, it's the Juventus flick.
Well, I
mean,
mean,
people have been drawn to Juventus, but yeah, you're right.
Not dissimilar to how poorly marked De Ligt was for the first.
Well,
to be fair,
yeah,
they've returned the compliment.
Yes.
And then, of course,
even after that, Luis makes a really good save from Ziyech.
Yeah,
and then you're absolutely right what you said earlier. There's 5 minutes of injury time, and the clock is on 94-50 odd when Sissoko hits this up and under. And it's not, let's not pretend this is a kind of clever pass.
It's not a Xabi Alonso diagonal, is it?
No, he's whacking it in a vague direction of Lorente.
Yeah.
And Lorente knocks it down for Ali. Ali pokes it through for Moura.
Well, hang on, but that Ali touch, though. Ali touch.
It's brilliant. Yeah. And suddenly, as the clock goes to 95:00,
yes,
there's Moura, knocks it in. It's 95:01 as it crosses the line.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think the commentator,
Darren Fletcher explodes.
He goes, it's the last kick of the game.
Yeah.
It turns out there's sort of 2 minutes of faffing about afterwards.
Yeah, they did. It went to like 97 or something.
But in terms of 5 minutes of injury time, it was the last kick of the game.
Yeah.
And there's that amazing photograph. There was in all the papers the next day, where you got Moura off celebrating the distance and other Tottenham players going to join him, and just Ajax players like nine pins laid out across the box.
Yes.
And they know that this Ajax is over because they know that 2 or 3 of them are going to go, and it's not, and sure enough, De Ligt and De Jong both go, and then a year later they've lost Ziyech and Donny van der Beek as well, and they know they had it in their grasp, and
but Jonathan,
it's gone.
From a football purist point of view, and I'll ask you this because I'm sure Nihal won't agree. From a purist point of view, it is a great shame that Ajax side actually they should have gone through, and actually it would have been interesting to see, because for that side to get to a final, maybe even win the competition, to put themselves more firmly, if you like, in the history books, would have been.
I mean, yes and no, but this happens in the Champions League. That some seasons you get 3 clubs who are all brilliant, and the narrative around them is really interesting, and the fact you had Liverpool, who were clearly on the up under Klopp and had been so close the previous year, and the fact they'd come back against Barcelona, that was a great story, and they deserved a place in the final. The fact Tottenham had this series of incredible comebacks, everything Pochettino had done over the previous 4 or 5 years, they deserve a place in the final. This Ajax getting that generation together, this sort of once in a 20-25 year happening, they deserve the place in the final. You get some years with the same old teams, you've seen all the players before, you know exactly what they're doing, and it's sort of like, I'm not that bothered by this. That season there were 3 teams, all of whom would have been a brilliant winner, and one of them had to not make it, and then one of them had to not perform in the final at all.
But how did what was your reaction when that third went in? I mean, obviously it was jubilee. Could you believe it?
Just going back to Jonathan's points about Ajax, was that as the game went on, and I'm not anywhere near as knowledgeable as Jonathan this, it just felt though that their youth and naivety got the better of them, and their lack of fitness as well kind of got the fit of them. It just seemed like they didn't have the psychological strength to deal with it.
Because something I wondered at the time, and this is one of those speculative thoughts you have, that it's very hard to have any idea whether it's got any validity or not. I wonder, for all you say about the fans and how noisy it was and everything, I wonder if by the end that almost became too much. It became they became aware of what it meant, and they became aware of how fragile this thing was, how nebulous this thing was. If they didn't do it, they had, after Vertonghen hits the bar, they've got 8 minutes to hold out.
Yeah. And
each of those seconds must have felt like an hour. And maybe away from home, maybe the mentality is slightly different. It's easier to play the moment rather than imagining what the celebrations would be like.
Because they needed to go to Madrid and win, because they'd lost the first leg. I think did they draw at home to Juventus? But they certainly won in Turin. You know, they needed to go away from home and get those results.
Yeah, but you're right. Both of those second legs were away, and I wonder if maybe for a young team that's easier. I don't know. I mean, it was a thought that occurred to me in the immediate aftermath of this game. Maybe holding a lead at home is it's harder to focus, and it's easy to get ahead of yourself.
But again, watching this game back, you know, we talked about that Ziyech shot, an inch to the left, and it's a goal, and it's probably the game over. And I think that is one of the. It's such an incredible half of football, because, you know, 3 Tottenham goals seemed so unlikely, and yet it wasn't as if they completely dominated, because Ajax had their chances as well. And that's the beauty of football, is margins, absolute margins.
I think we hadn't come back from being 2-0 down. I think this is something that Fletch said on the commentary. We hadn't for like 9 years. It was like 2010 against Arsenal, the last time we'd been 2-0 down at half time and won a game. Mm-hmm. You know, so there was quite a bit. Not that Lucas Moura was aware of that statistic, to be fair, clearly, but so it was quite an uphill struggle for us. I mean, getting back to the whole what it was like when that happened. Oh my gosh! Like just now, just thinking about it was, and just watching it again today, I felt the exhilaration again. I said to you, I've never burst into tears before, but I remember, because I did this, or BBC Sport interviewed me about this, and I remember jumping up and running to the end of the living room and then just looking at my son. So he's at one end, I'm at the other end, and just staring at him, then hugged him so tight, and then ran upstairs because there was just mayhem. And my wife was upstairs in our bedroom just going, "Are you guys all right?" And I went upstairs and dropped to my knees and burst into tears, like Punch did, right? That's exactly what Punch did. And I just started crying. It was just the years and years of being kind of also runs and the butt of the joke. It's happening again. It's happening again. You know, all of that stuff just all came out. And this is why it's just such a great thing to be invested in your team, because of moments like that, right? Which can't be scripted. There's a collective moment. I mean, you know, Twitter, that for the next few days afterwards, you know, Tottenham Twitter was just extraordinary. And also neutral football Twitter, because of what Liverpool had achieved, but we went one further. So it was even more. So for a lot of neutrals, they were saying it was one of the most exciting games of football they'd ever seen, because it's just the timing, right? 95 minutes and 1 second it goes over the line. I mean, that is Roy the Rover stuff, right? That is Hollywood football stuff, right? Or soccer, as they would probably call it. So you kind of I'd never felt that before.
Well, there's also, and I don't know if you did feel this, but there's also, it's one of those goals where there's a tiny moment, it's probably 0.1 seconds, 0.2 seconds before the shot, where you sort of know he's going to score. Yeah. And so from a Sunderland fan's point of view, and clearly this is a lower tariff, but there was a game on New Year's Day, Sunderland were home to Manchester City, and it was 0-0 going deep into injury time, and Gidon is suddenly through, and he sort of he tries to have a shot, and he sort of falls over himself, and in doing that he goes round, I guess Joe Hart, I can't remember who it was, but he goes round the keeper, and suddenly he's 4 yards out with an open goal. And I'm sort of in my armchair at home, because I was down in London at the time, and thinking, well, hang on, even Gidon 1 can't miss this. This is a goal, and that means we've won this game 1-0, because this is the 94th minute. Yeah. And so to have that little moment of, this has happened, this is going to happen, just before it does happen, they're my as a fan, they're my favourite type of goals.
I don't know if I thought that. I don't know if I thought it was going in. As soon as he got it, that's a really interesting thing to identify those nanoseconds.
Me as a neutral who was writing a piece on the game and dreading a Tottenham goal because it would mean a complete rewrite. But also as
half time, press send. That's all good. I'm gonna watch that as a fan the last time.
But also as as a fan of football who sort of wanted the comeback to happen because that's the great story.
Sure.
Yes.
I definitely had that. Oh, he's done it before he did it.
Wow.
I agree. I had the same actually. To me, as soon as Ali makes that touch, I just was like, "That's in. That's a goal." But perhaps that's a neutral position.
No, I definitely didn't. No,
Yeah.
I definitely didn't. I definitely didn't because my reaction when it did go in wasn't knew that.
Yeah.
It was. It was not
Called that.
Yeah, exactly. Bang, knew that was going to happen. Right, son, get us a cup of tea with you, son. Right, go to the Champions League final, son. It wasn't that. It was like, oh, I've seen anything like this in my whole life. Right, so no, there was no deja vu in that moment. It was just the great, and that's why I always return to it. And I mean, for my son, there's still, win the Premier League, win trophies. He's got all of that he wants to do, and but it is going to take something extraordinary to ever top that, just because of the nature of how it happened. If you win the Champions League, 4-2 or whatever, cool, it's brilliant. I'd love to win the Champions League, but now we're into a situation where with Mourinho and with our new stadium, and I think we did the best business in the transfer window, with all of that and the building of this club onto another level, there's almost an expectation that in the next few seasons, we're going to win something, right? Leading up to this Champions League final, there was never an expectation, right, that we were going to get to this quarterfinals, get out of the group of death, get out of that, progress, get to the quarterfinals, get through the quarterfinals, get to semi-finals, half time, it's done, right? It's over. And then we're there. It's not just the result. Yeah. It's the entire build-up. It's all the emotions of decades of being a Spurs fan, everything hard into that moment. That's why we could talk in, 10 years' time, and we may have a whole trophy cabinet full of trophies by then. But I will still probably return to this moment because I don't know how many moments like that happen in football to anyone, right? The 95th minute of a game in a Champions League, whereas at halftime you've been out. You are being out, right? I mean, I don't know, to create all of those elements again, it's of course never going to happen. So rather than saying ruined it for my son, right, it's kind of almost ruined it for me because I just don't know if it's ever going to get as emotional as that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've said this on this podcast before, but when Sunderland beat Leeds in the FA Cup final in '73, which I'm very glad I wasn't alive for because that would have ruined it because I'd have been too young to understand it and appreciate it. But my dad, who'd been he'd been whistling for the final whistle for 20 minutes, and as soon as the final whistle blew, his initial reaction was sadness because he knew it'd never be that good again.
Wow.
Hope springs eternal.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm going to see some amazing moments as a Spurs fan. I know I am, but that is just unbearable. Yeah.
Nihal, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about this game. It really has. I feel like going back and watching the whole game now myself, and I'm not even a Spurs fan.
I know. It's just because there's a romance about what happened that night, right? There's a romance, and it says a lot about spirit. And and my son plays cricket and football, and they went 2-0 down inside 10 minutes a couple of weekends ago and ended up winning 6-4. And just that resilience that Spurs showed that day is something. Certainly something I would.
If ever a player earned his right to be in the matchday squad for the final, it was Lucas Moura. And my goodness, didn't he? But there we are. We'll finish there. Thank you very much, Nihal. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, my good man.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Marcus.
For more stories like that, do check out theblizzard.co.uk. We'll be back next week with another great game from football. But until then, as I say, thank you, Nihal.
Lovely to see you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Cheers. Thanks very much for that. It was great. Really enjoyed that.
Have a good one.